Do you want a compact, everyday carry rangefinder type camera, but you don't really want to drop all your dough on one camera? Well, I'm here to tell you that you probably need to lower your expectations, or you'll just end up being disappointed for the rest of your life. Great. Now that we're back on the ground, let me tell you about a camera that might scratch that itch that film photography gave you. Everybody has their ideal camera, but you can't help but wonder if there's a camera out there that's more affordable without sacrificing too many features. For me, I may have found a camera that bridges that gap, at least momentarily. The Minolta Hi-Matic 7S II. Released in 1977, the Hi-Matic 7S II was a compact rangefinder that's both elegant and practical. While it was one of the final iterations of the Hi-Matic series, it's arguably the best of the Hi-Matic series. Highly regarded by film enthusiasts, this compact rangefinder embodies the charm and functionality of late 70s Japanese camera engineering, and as the II suggests, it was the successor to the Hi-Matic 7 series, but it took a more minimalist approach, favoring a smaller, lighter design that catered to photographers seeking portability without sacrificing quality. Rocking a 40mm f1.7 Rokkor lens, it earned comparisons to more expensive Leica optics of the era, and the aperture priority mode paired with its coupled rangefinder could spell disaster for the 80-year-old man in the plaza just trying to enjoy his cup of tea and newspaper. But there's one large caveat that keeps this camera's price from going to the moon. Your expectations are supposed to be low, remember? Now let's talk about some of the similarities that this camera has to other compact rangefinders of the era. The Minolta Hi-Matic 7S II comes equipped with a fixed 40mm f1.7 Rokkor lens, a gem in the world of compact cameras. Sharp, asterisk, fast, and mostly versatile, this lens potentially has the ability to create an image that looks like you just put a sticker on someone's astigmatism. Compared to the Canonet QL17 or the Olympus 35SP, the Rokkor lens holds its own. The one thing I didn't really get to test is the sharpness wide open. I bounced between shooting f8 at 1/500th of a second outdoors or f1.7 1/15th of a second indoors, and it's hard to say whether the lack of sharpness or softness is due to the slow shutter speed that I was using or the lens itself. If you're the type of person that's nervous someone might hear you on the toilet, rest easy. This camera has a leaf shutter lens. And that's not to say that you're going to be using this camera on the toilet, rather that you don't want people to hear you using the toilet. That'd be weird. Don't use cameras in the bathroom. There are two modes in the 7S II. Fully manual and shutter priority automatic. In shutter priority mode, you select the shutter speed and the camera automatically adjusts the aperture. In manual mode, you have full control over both settings, ideal for those who like to fine-tune their exposure. Adjusting the shutter speed is just like most other cameras, where you twist the ring on the barrel of the lens, and adjusting the aperture is just as simple by placing your finger on this nub right here on the bottom of the camera and turning the aperture on the top of the barrel to your desired aperture. Shutter speeds range from 1/500th of a second to 1/8 of a second. Plus, it has a bulb mode for long exposures. While its 1/500th shutter speed may be slower than some YouTube photographers getting to the gosh dang point, the 7S II functions handily regardless of this limitation. Just put an ND filter on it for crying out loud. There is one downside to using shutter priority metering in this camera, and that's that you can't really tell what aperture you're using without taking the camera down from your eye and looking at the barrel itself. Let's talk about the viewfinder. The viewfinder is smaller, dimmer, and more difficult to focus than the QL17 GIII. On top of all that, the viewfinder does not allow for parallax correction. This is when the frame lines inside the viewfinder adjust as you change focus to mimic more accurately where your barrel is pointing as your subject moves closer or further away from the lens. This can be useful if you plan to get up close and personal with your subject. If you're able to keep the light meter on this camera working, the ISO ranges from 25 ISO to 800 ISO, which seems a little bit limiting, but most people are only shooting Portra 400 and HP5 anyways, so what are you really complaining about? The one drawback to this ISO dial changer doohickey is that it can be a little fiddly. Sometimes these get stuck. If you've never had the opportunity to feel one of these cameras, let me just tell you that it is solid and compact. It's sturdy enough that it feels like it could take a beating of everyday use, but also it could fit into a jacket pocket. It's a hefty, serious piece of photography equipment. One of the pros of this camera is its battery independence. Yep, you heard that right. If your battery dies, you're stuck shooting fully manual with no light meter, but at least you can still keep shooting. And that's a huge ace in the sleeve to keep this camera shooting long after its production date. And that's part of the reason that I'm so interested in it, is because of the full manual mode that doesn't require a battery to operate. Let's talk about a couple of the quirks and drawbacks of this camera. Number one is battery dependency. As you've probably heard me allude to in this video about keeping the light meter going and whatnot, the camera's meter and auto mode rely on a now discontinued mercury battery. Pretty common for compact rangefinders of this type. The QL17 also shares this drawback. However, there have been people that modify the camera to read voltage from a different, newer type battery, but they're not always as accurate as they were manufactured to be. Voltages and battery output can just alter the accuracy of a light meter in drastic ways. Number 2 is limited shutter speeds. You may think that 1/500th of a second is limiting for people that want to shoot in broad daylight, but this is easily remedied by just not shooting a 400 speed film or higher. You can shoot a lower speed film stock. Just try the broccoli, you might like it. Number 3 is the viewfinder patch fading. In low light, it can be difficult to see the viewfinder readout and even harder to focus. I have seen some hacks where you take a piece of developed film and you place it over the viewfinder patch here, and that basically increases the contrast between the rangefinder patch and the viewfinder. So that could be a solution for you if you end up going with a camera like this one. So why choose the Minolta Hi-Matic 7S II? The biggest selling point for this camera is that it's just simple to use. It can be with you anywhere that you're at, it's rugged, and it can deliver stunning results. I can't always guarantee that the Minolta Hi-Matic 7S II is going to be cheaper than the Canonet QL17 GIII. Given that the two had the same price and the similar condition, I would probably go for the Canonet QL17 GIII. But the silver lining here is that I was able to find this camera for $20 at a thrift store. Lots of people tend to undervalue this camera because Minolta is just a brand name that's not around anymore. It doesn't get the same street cred that a Canon does. So I would say that this camera can be found for cheaper out there in the wild. So if you're in the market for a rangefinder that blends portability with performance and has minimal drawbacks to image quality, give the Hi-Matic 7S II a shot. You might just find it's the perfect camera for you. And if it's not, just list it on eBay or something, I don't care. Thanks for watching. I love interacting with the film photography community through these videos, and they're fun to make on top of that. So if you enjoyed this video like I enjoyed putting it together, consider hitting the subscribe button and sticking around to see where this journey takes us. But that's all I've got. Bye.